Welcome to episode 55 of In Touch with iOS, a podcast that talks about iPhone, iPad, Apple Watch, Apple TV, and related technologies, plus tips, apps, and gear. I am your host, Dave Ginsburg, and my returning guest this week is Kelly Guimont from the Mac Observers Daily Observations podcast. How are you doing, Kelly?
I'm doing well. David, how are you?
That is good to hear. Glad you are here again to have some more fun. And this is going to be an interesting show.
Well, we do have a lot to talk about. So
we do have tons to talk about. There's so much. I can't believe how much news of Apple world this past week. Recording on Thursday night as we record this. And Apple was pretty aggressive with getting a lot of stuff done this week. We'll touch upon here in just a minute.
Clearing the decks.
Clear decks. We had the new iPads, new AirPods, and all kinds of fun stuff. Couple news stories that want to caught my ear here a little bit is, there's always been all this speculation about the AirPower mat, I guess they're calling it.
Oh, yes.
Wireless charge mat we've only been talking about for the last, year and a half?
18 months, yeah.
2 years almost now. Mm-hmm. And Mac Rumors has an article talking about there is a trademark on the AirPower name. So that's telling us, well, maybe Apple is really going to release this thing. Plus, there's been photos all over Apple's website with iPhones and
ones. I feel like something happened because we did get new AirPods, like we mentioned, yep. And I feel like they were supposed to be a set.
Yeah, I thought,
and that's why it got as far as there's product photography on the website.
Right, because they want to
because they were supposed to be there. Yeah,
they want to show it off. So it was very, very, very strange, but that was out in the news here today, and lots of discussion about the event. If anybody doesn't know, I will be on vacation next week, so we'll miss the episode next week. But I will be on for Mac Guys Only if anybody wants to listen to the reaction time episode as we react when they announce all the new stuff that comes out, which we probably won't be surprised much the way all the rumors have been coming out. But it's pretty obvious, as I've been talking about on previous episodes, that Apple is going to talk about starting up a new TV service and a new news app service, which will go along with their texture purchase of magazines. And rumor has it, Wall Street Journal's on board. New York Times and
WAPO.
Washington Post is not.
Now, can I tell you the theory that I have about that? Because I was thinking about this literally this morning on Daily Observations. I was thinking about this, and what I hope is that the partnerships that we haven't heard about yet are partnerships with companies that own lots of newspapers in lots of different locations, and that it ends up being a thing where Apple has partnered with companies in order to make local news available in lots of places. Yep. So they partner with X company that owns newspapers in LA and San Antonio and Minneapolis and Knoxville, Tennessee, and like a bunch of cities, so that the paper in each of those places could be available as an option through Apple News. Like, I want to go there, I can read Wall Street Journal, I can read USA Today or whatever sort of national and worldwide partners they end up with for Apple News, but I can also get my local news from that same place. And I feel like that would be the magic that would drive subscriptions. I would really like to see Apple do something like that to help not just draw attention, but draw eyeballs and money to local news.
Now, me being in Chicago has two papers, if you want to call it that haven't been very popular as of late because of just the way the newspaper industry is in itself, the Chicago Tribune and the Chicago Times.
Right.
I would not be at all surprised if they're both jumping on the bandwagon. They haven't announced anything, but and we also have a local paper in the northwest suburbs where I live, the Daily Herald. I'd be curious to see if they would jump in on it too, because again, all three of those papers that I would be reading here in the local area, circulation not so good. And I don't know how their paywall is doing for both. Well, sometimes doesn't have much of a paywall as the Tribune does, but and the Daily Herald does as well. But I'd be interesting to see if, like you said, local newspapers like that, just from my experiences, and even go out in the West Coast, Los Angeles, what would happen out there. And that's, the second largest city in the country, and a number of newspapers out there. And
I'm curious, like, I would like that because I would like Apple to shine a spotlight on local news. I would like Apple to, because and that's twofold. Partly because people need local news, and like what happens and what you can directly affect starts in your community, in your neighborhood, in your area, and then in your city. So like I can do stuff right here in my neighborhood. I can do things in East Portland. I can do things in Portland. Like, it starts like very, very, very locally. And so I would like Apple to bring attention to that, because it's the thing that never gets enough attention, in my opinion, anymore, especially. But also because it would sort of be a swipe at Facebook, who suddenly, after, doing all of the stuff that they could do to court all of the news publishers to put everything on Facebook, so that local newsrooms ended up not having the kind of staffing they need, and everybody canceled their subscription because they were getting all their news from Facebook in the first place. And so now newsrooms have diminished greatly in the number of people that are there and the amount of coverage they can offer. And now Facebook is going, we want to offer all this local news to everybody, but we can't find it. And so I would love if Apple was like, we'll save you. I really want that to be true for both of those reasons. So,
right. And
as a frustrated reporter myself, like I watch that stuff a little closer than maybe the average person does.
I watch it a little closely too. I always used to follow. I follow local radio, and there's a great guy out. His name's Robert Feeder. I've been reading him for 30 plus years. Covered the Chicago local media beat, and so I've followed it for a long time too. So we're very much alike when it comes to that stuff. But it's exciting. But then you turn around, and I see Comcast, my favorite company right now. Delay from them supposed to being at my mother-in-law's home to install brand new cable, decided to be late, and I had to cancel and delay us recording this show. So I'm so glad we're here.
Well, I have some things to say about Comcast too, but I will have to keep them to myself because this is a family show.
This is a family show. Please, I have to keep the clean label on my podcast.
Yeah. But the minute you want to switch to an explicit tag, have me back and say Comcast and let's go.
Maybe we'll talk offline here. But they are launching a new $5 a month streaming box, and the Motion Picture Association report highlights strong streaming growth. So there's it was a 9 to 5 Mac. Comcast is releasing a thing called the new Xfinity Flex service, which will ties together with people with the paid internet. So there's many people out there who just have the internet only and not their great cable service.
Or they did something like, I know a number of people who did the, whatever they call it, where you pay for cable and internet, and so you get a bigger break on each of the service. You come out ahead by buying both instead of just having the one.
Which I do.
So a lot of people have like 2 to 20 or 2 to 70, something like that, like basic stations, even if they don't ever watch them, because it saves them $15 a month or whatever to make that work.
Right. So. And then great thing is all these services will stream on your iOS device, specifically the iPad, and of course the iPhone too. But unless you have the iPhone XS Max, the screens are kind of small. But
yeah.
I think that's really where it's going as far as this discussion is going to be on Monday for all their announcements. Like I said, there won't be much. I don't think there's going to be much surprise by the time we go watch.
I think the surprise is going to end up being specifics, in that this show starring this person will launch on this day.
Their shows, right?
Or, something that nobody's heard about yet is this show that stars these people, and it will be out in June. Or this is coming, in this time frame, whatever. Like, right. I think, and then like pricing, and
that's going to be the big deal breaker. It's just finding out what they're going to charge for.
And I'm not even curious about pricing for what they're going to charge. Stick with me on this. I'm curious about how they're going to charge it, and that is, I'm an Apple Music subscriber. So if I'm paying $10 a month for Apple Music, let's say. If I pay $15 a month, do I also get video? Or like, will $15, 10 will get you one, 15 will get you two?
Right.
Like what? If I have a 4K Apple TV, does that get me any sort of consideration? Like, is my 4K TV do I have to pay extra if I have a 4K Apple TV instead of a fourth generation Apple TV, which isn't 4K,
Right.
because I'm getting higher quality content? How are they going to roll the news service in with all of these? If I just can I just get all of the stuff I want from Apple for $25 a month? Is it 40? What's it going to look like? And what other services are they going to go live with? Because frankly, I don't ever use the TV app. I find it infuriating. I would rather go to an app and watch their stuff, and then go to a different app and watch their stuff, and go to the other app and watch the other stuff, because I don't like using the TV app. I've tried and failed on not on a device, like on the Apple TV, where it's where you would expect to use the TV app.
Right.
To me, it hasn't been great. Maybe I just haven't spent enough time with it, so it can't figure me out. I don't know, but
have you used it on the iPad or the iPhone?
I have not.
Or the iPad. I don't know about the iPhone.
Yeah, I have gotten a couple of weird notifications from the TV app on my iPad where it wanted to tell me the Super Bowl was on, and I'm like, TV app, I have never watched a football game anywhere near you in all the time you've been in my house.
Yeah.
What on earth makes you think I'm starting now?
Right.
And so then I went in and turned off notifications, and I'm a lot happier with the TV app on my iPad.
There you go.
So that's it. So that's what I'm curious about, is how the services are going to relate to each other as far as payment, and then what the hook is going to be, because I don't think we've heard that yet. How are they going to hook you?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Apple Music was 3 months free. Go try it and see if you love it. And then when it turns out that you love it, it will be a lot easier to pay us $10 a month, because you've been living there for 3 months, not 30 days, not 7, 90. And so what are they going to do with this? Like, is it free till dub, or is it free for a year for everybody who buys an Apple TV from this day forward? What's the catch going to be, and what's the thing that they're going to do to try to get people interested and then keep them? And that's what I'm wondering about, is what that rollout's going to look like.
Just like Apple Music, when it first came out, they gave 3 months free for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So I would venture to say they'll probably do something very similar to that, if that's the case. So
yeah, and I think they might stage the rollout of the TV shows accordingly, so that people don't watch everything for a couple of weeks and then go, never mind. So that's the other reason I'm curious about the nuts and bolts. Yes, subscribe for a month, binge on Discovery, cancel. Yes. So that's that's the thing that I'm wondering about, is what the nuts and bolts of this are going to look like. And the detail is the part that I was always interested in. Apple's going to make a TV service. Like, the first thing I wanted to know was, how does that tie into Apple Music?
Yep.
Price wise, and what are, when Apple Music rolled out, they gave everybody 3 months free. What are they going to do here? And so I'm still interested in that stuff, and we still haven't heard anything substantive on either of those fronts. And so that's what I'm really wondering about.
Should be interesting. We're going to be watching very closely. So I'll have my reviews our next episode, which will be a week after. But so all the craziness will be past, and I can give my views of what happened the next time. So
yeah,
let's dive into the iPads. I mean, Monday morning, all of a sudden, what do we get? We get an announcement. There are new iPads, huh? So I was like, wow. And I mean, there was lots of rumors about the iPad mini. I knew that one was pretty much a given, but I was kind of thrown off to seeing that they're all of a sudden they come out with a new iPad Air.
Mm-hmm.
So I of course have the iPad Pro, which is, it's expensive, starts at $799.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have the iPad, which is a good entry level iPad. And I've been recommending it to everybody who just wants a good basic iPad. That just all they need is just to get an iPad to get online and do some things. They don't need the performance. They don't need anything crazy.
No, it's a solid device.
It's solid, and it works with the Apple. I mean, every single one of these devices now work with the Apple Pencil, which is awesome. Which I'll hit in a second here, but I know the iPad, you could pick it up at Amazon for $249 for the 32 gig model. How affordable is that? And people are already questioning. Well, let's get through the line, and I'll give you my views about why they're keeping this other iPad on the line, I think.
Okay.
So again, we already know about the iPad Pro. That's the expensive one. And they came out with the iPad Air, and the Air starts at $499. So you got, as far as specs goes, the Air is a 10.5 inch screen. So they basically replaced with the old iPad Pro 10.5 that they had previous.
Do note that this is the triumphant return of 2 devices, because there wasn't an iPad Air for a long time. There was an Air. Right. There was an original, the OG 2. Air, and then there was the Air 2.
Right.
And then they just kind of got rid of the Air 2 in favor of plain old iPad, mere mortal iPad nothing. Sometimes it gets called
6th gen, I think it's called.
Yeah, because it's just iPad. It's not. It has no additional qualifier at the end. And so this press release, first thing Monday morning, kicked off like the triumphant return of both of these devices with various degrees of triumph, obviously, because we'll talk about that in a minute. But that's the thing that I think gets forgotten a little bit.
It does. So the iPad Air, really the only thing the iPad Air does not have compared to the Pro is the ProMotion. Who cares? Most people won't care about that, but it has the A12 chip, as it was, I believe, and it has.
And the current chip is the 12X. So this 12X, is the latest, greatest, but it's right up there. So
it's up there. I mean,
it's a great unit, like as a piece of hardware. Yeah, for sure.
And the iPad Mini, I believe, had the same processor, did it not?
Yes.
And 2224 by 1668 is the resolution. It's not too far behind resolution on the Pro at all. The iPad and the iPad Mini have the exact same resolution, 2448 by 1539. Yes. So we'll get to the iPad Mini in just a minute. But comparatively speaking, the iPad doesn't have anything else. No True Tone, there's no ProMotion, no wide color, So it's, like I said, a good basic model for just anybody that needs it.
And also, it's a Touch ID device, not a Face ID device.
Yes, they're all Touch ID.
A new release that is a Touch ID device. So that's
the Air did not have a Touch ID before. It does now. Right. And so does the Mini.
The Air 2 did. The Air 2
did. Right. The Air did not. Right.
Yeah.
I got an Air sitting on my desk that I'm using as a spare unit here.
Yeah, I have an OG Air. Mr. Kelly has an Air 2, and that was his daily driver until he broke down and bought the Baby Pro about a week ago.
Okay.
so there is one in my house I get to go touch and enjoy and gaze at adoringly and wish real hard about.
Him and I are in the same club now.
Yes.
But
I'm still really happy with my current until last week, or my 10.5 Pro. I really enjoy it. I like it a lot. So I have no complaints.
Same as the Air, basically. I mean, other than just a few different things here.
Yep.
So then you have the iPad Mini. Everybody was itching to get this Mini back.
Or the iPad SE, I keep calling it. Because the little one came back with all the same stuff as the big one.
Everybody was itching for it because it was released. It hadn't been touched since 2015, so almost 4 years it hadn't been touched.
And they were still selling that thing like it was a valid piece of hardware like a week ago. Yeah.
It was crazy. So same thing. They have all the specs that the Air has and most of what the Pro has. Just no ProMotion and very good resolution, fast A12 processor, and it's getting rave reviews from all kinds of the different sites. The Verge.
Really nice camera in both of these, by the way, front and back. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Jason Snell said some good things about it. Lots of the folks in the Mac community have been saying some great things about this Mini. I think a lot of people are super stoked about it. It's tempting to have as a second iPad. It really is. If you really wanted it to have its for portability, so you don't have to carry something really large. I had the old iPad Air iPad Mini at one point when I was doing some work for my company, and I really liked it. I didn't want to give it up, so then they wanted it back. So, but I didn't mind it because I really liked the size. And
it's so sad to have watched it continue to age badly. It was no fun, and I'm sad it was a press release. Like that's the only complaint I really have is that I feel like after 4, and I understand not wanting to be the person who comes out and goes, yeah, it only took us 4 years. I understand not wanting to have to be a person on stage for that. But at the same time, there's a certain amount of I feel like the Mini deserves better than it gets a lot of times.
Yeah.
So that's just me.
Just to your point on that is I was very surprised Apple did it this way. I don't ever recall them doing this mass amount of hardware releases over a news release. There always have been brought them into the announcement. That's all. That really just set it up to everybody knowing at this point. they're only talking about services on this
absolutely. I never had any doubt that there was going to be.
Yeah, I didn't have any,
but they were going to talk about anything else. Yeah.
Simplified it. So
yeah, and I like and it was smart to get it all out of everybody's systems this week so that we all record our podcast and everything and get them out the door so that we're all ready for services. Yeah. Next week, exactly. But I did feel a little bad because like the iPad Mini didn't get a lot of love. 4 years it sat on shelves in that same configuration, and like if you bought one a week ago, it's almost aged out of usefulness, like in a way. And so that's part of the issue that I had with it. And then it's the return of the iPad Air model because there wasn't one for a long time. And so I felt kind of bad. Like both of these devices are a big deal, in a lot of ways. And, and Apple just puts out a press release and calls it good.
Well, and then
they did the same thing Tuesday.
The Macs, but we don't talk about Macs here. There
are new iMacs, but be careful about them. And all I'm going to do is point out that at one point, the concern was paying 2019 money for 2017 tech. And if you buy an entry-level iMac, you're still doing that. So be aware.
Yeah. Okay.
Be aware that that's a thing that's happening. So that's all we won't talk about Macs anymore.
All right. If you don't mind. Because that's why we're called In Touch with iOS.
Yeah.
But I wanted to just to touch upon again the basic iPad model. I really think Apple is keeping this model in place for a number of reasons. More so, consumers who want to have a very affordable iPad, they're giving that. But I think it really has a focus on education. I think the education market is going to be jumping all over this now. The fact that they can buy these iPads, it's all they need for what their needs are. Unless it's something real advanced, they can buy other models if they need to. But the education market's going to get that same price break under $300 for these iPads, and they're going to be buying them by thousands. I mean, I remember being at the Jamf user conference, and Ohio State University was buying over 13,000 iPads for incoming freshmen. Well, think about how much money they're going to be saving by buying these iPads versus having to get what they had to get before with the Pro. Mm-hmm. So I would not be at all surprised that that's one of two of the big reasons.
It's the education. I mean, it's almost the ePad, like we had the eMac back in the day that was like designed specifically for schools. I feel like it's the same sort of thing for those reasons. And the thing I would add to that is that there's also a peripheral, because this all came from last year's educational event in March in Chicago. And yeah, and I will have a soft spot for that event for the rest of my life because Tim Cook name-checked App Camp for Girls in the middle of the presentation. It still makes me make this face when I talk about it. But part of their commitment to education is making sure that stuff is affordable, which is why the iPad stayed and why they added the Air instead of old Yellering the iPad that they had. But also, at that event, they also announced the Logitech Crayon, which is an alternate stylus, Apple Pencil-like device. It's got the same very fine tip, but it's about half the price. Yeah, I was going to say, it's like half the price. And the other thing about it, I know a number of people who bought the Logitech Crayon over an Apple Pencil because the Crayon, and this is silly when you think about it, the Crayon is pencil-shaped. And the Apple Pencil is crayon-shaped in that the Apple Pencil is totally round, the original Apple Pencil, which is what you have to use for the new devices. For the new iPad Air and Mini both use the original Apple Pencil, which is the one that is completely round. And the Logitech Crayon is shaped like a pencil. So it has sides, which means it won't roll off your desk. So it's cheaper and you won't lose it. And it's got the same sort of tip and sensitivity that the Apple Pencil has. Like there's no reason not to go that route unless you have, a special holder for the pencil or anything like that. I don't know. But that was the thing about it because I feel like that particular peripheral gets overlooked a lot and it's less expensive. And for some people more comfortable to hold something shaped like a regular pencil with the sides. For some people, that's a lot more comfortable and a lot easier to grasp.
Absolutely. So, and you talk about pencils. That's the other thing. All 4 iPads now use a pencil. So the only difference is, and the crayon. So the iPad Mini, the iPad Air all use the first gen Apple Pencil as well as the Logitech Crayon. Mm-hmm. The iPad Pro uses the Pencil 2, which is the one, of course, has a half.
Yes, one flat side.
One flat side, because it has to be that way because it attaches to the iPad magnetically to charge.
Which is the only thing I don't, which is my, well, not the only thing, but it's my other complaint about the OG Pencil, is that charging is second in ludicrousness only to the Magic Mouse with the lightning port.
The Magic Mouse, yes. Yes. Oh my God, don't get me started on that.
I won't. And I, for the record, I don't have one. I'm Team Trackpad.
Yeah, I have a trackpad too.
Everywhere I go. So yes, like this is the input. This is the correct input device, the Apple trackpad.
But the old the pencil, of course, they give you this two-way adapter, as I'm showing Kelly on camera here, that you can plug your lightning cable in one end and plug the pencil in the other, and then USB magically charge it instead of being quirky and plugging it into the bottom of the port of the iPad. So
yes, the pencil I have didn't come with that.
No, it didn't. Yeah, this comes with the pencil now.
Now.
This is from when I had the 10.5 inch. I still have it.
I'm gonna have to look in the box again because I don't remember seeing it.
Look, because this was.
I just remember extra tips. So yeah,
and those too.
Yeah. So anyway, I was excited to see that you could use a pencil with a mini. Partly because now I saw other people speculating about this, meaning that pencil support is coming to the iPhone. I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know if I care. It doesn't feel like the right screen to me, but that's just me. And that's also because I don't have a plus size phone.
Well, yeah, I mean, with the XS Max, which I have here,
I don't even have a 10. So
and the XS Max is big. I mean, I could see it being a small size pencil, maybe similar to what the Note series in Samsung. I know we shouldn't even talk about Samsung, but the Note series has that pencil that they have, the stylus,
the little stylus, that they have.
But I don't know if Apple wants to do that or go down that road, and maybe you want to stay with what Steve Jobs had said. You don't need a pencil you don't need a stylus with your phone.
You have 5 on the end of each hand.
There's your stylus here.
So, but I was interested to see that at least they weren't continuing to treat the iPad mini like it's second class. Now, whether or not John Martellaro over at Mac Observer has made the argument that it was not smart to go with Touch ID on the new devices because Face ID is orders of magnitude more secure. I'm like, but then you can't make the iPad mini at an iPad mini price if you're putting Touch ID cameras and all of those things. So
it's cost. Yep.
Yeah. So I think that's part of it. I don't mind the home button. I'm still team home button. I still rock an iPhone 8 as my daily driver because I couldn't pay $1,000 for a phone because if according to plan, I'm going to get a new phone this year. I buy them outright.
I cringe how much I pay a month for my phone right now. So
yeah, but like the difference between $24 a month for a phone and $30 a month for a phone is a lot different than it's midnight and do I want to be on the hook for $800 or do I want to be on the hook for $1,100?
There you go.
And that feels hard because I know that my phone is going to have a finite lifespan. That's really what it comes down to. So, so for me, like, and like, I think Touch ID is great. Like, I think it's fine. I don't really have a problem with it. And it's so fast on the 8. On my phone from a year and a half ago, I can't imagine how much faster and more reliable it's going to be on these new devices that have a little bit more oomph with the processors and everything that's in them. So I feel like they're totally worthy upgrades, but just like I said about the mini and just like I said about like the Mac mini and just like I said about the iMacs, like, this is awesome, but we should have had it a year ago.
Right.
So, at least as far as the mini is concerned. The Air, like I don't know why the Air went away in the first place, so it was kind of weird that they brought it back, but I'm glad because I feel like there's people who need a little bit more than an entry-level iPad, but maybe don't need a USB-C situation. And, that's True. Another thing to consider. And I feel like that's going to be the sweet spot for a lot of people.
Yeah. And let me just, let's just wrap up with the iPad coverage here with some of the other specs. As I mentioned, A12 processors for the Mini and the Air, A12X for the Pro, A10 for the iPad. Storage, you got 64 or 256. Most people, I think 64 is more than enough, especially if you're using iCloud. If you pay for the iCloud service, it's pointless to have more than 64 gigs of RAM. Storage.
Storage, yeah.
And of course, you go all the way up to the iPad Pro, you can get a 1 terabyte, which is insanity.
It's crazy town. Yes.
I went with 256 just because I'm crazy. But I have that on my iPhone, and I probably use a quarter of it. So I don't think next time when I do my trade in, I may just go 64 and be smart. Pencil, we talked about, of course, the keyboard. It does have the Mini and the iPad only use Bluetooth keyboards. The Air is compatible to the Apple Smart Keyboard, along with the Pro.
The same as what my 10.5 iPad was, or is, I guess. Yeah.
So they did that good too, and battery life is the same. Well, of course, weight will go to determining factor of the model, and they are offering cellular versions for both as well, which tend to be a little pricey. Get you another $150 you got to spend if you want the cellular version.
Yeah.
But if you are one that want to have a always on connection, it might be worth it for you. So, that was Monday. Of course, we mentioned Tuesday. Of course, all the Macs were mentioned, and then Wednesday came along, and we were hoping for two things: the AirPods and the iPod Touch. Well, we got the AirPods, and I am pretty disappointed, to be honest with you. And I think most people are. I would say this is more of AirPods 1.5 as opposed to AirPods 2.0.
Okay, well, what were they supposed to do to be 2.0 then? Because this is the thing I was trying to figure out all along, is like what should they be? Because I did hear a lot of people going meh, and that's fine, but for
those who already own them,
right? And I'm still not in that camp yet.
So you're in a good shape. You're in good shape now.
I might be. I haven't. I'm so conflicted. I did hear a lot of people say they were going to come in black, and they don't. And I did hear, a lot of people talk about additional features, I guess. But I've heard a lot of hand waving about additional features or extra stuff that AirPods are supposed to do, and I don't know what that is. And so I felt like they made some very reasonable iterative upgrades. Because one of the upgrades is the chip. It's the
H1 versus the W1.
W1, yeah. So it's got a new chip in it. Part of that is supposed to make the connection time faster. The battery life is supposed to be better.
Slightly.
Not just because they're new, but longer time, longer practical usage time. The biggest change that they made is that you can now buy a case that you can set on a Qi charging mat.
Wireless, right?
And you can charge wirelessly or through the lightning connector at the bottom. And the other nice thing about them is that if you just want the case, if you just want to buy your old AirPods a treat, you can buy the wireless case for your old AirPods and call it good. And I know a lot of people aren't necessarily excited about that, but at the same time, I feel like that was a really smart decision, because Apple tends to be a company that will really relentlessly march forward. And they've done some really smart things with this stuff. Like, we know people are still using stuff from last year or even maybe the year before. And it's possible that they want to get more life out of that. And so they did make the case available for people who have first-gen AirPods but want to be able to charge them wirelessly. Now, if only Apple would sell us a method with which to charge devices like this.
$79.
Yes.
For that case. And it's so a little more on the specs. You can now ask Siri, and you can say, hey, her, to
S lady, we call her on TD.
S lady, yes, we do. For assistance without you having to know, you can physically reach up to your ear and go, oh, you can tap it.
Yes.
So now you don't have to do that anymore. Okay. And yeah, they're saying the performance is a little better with the headphone H1 chip. Like you said, stability with wireless. I would be interesting to see if anybody does more testing about stability with wireless, because I will tend to agree. Especially, I try to connect my AirPods to my Mac. A lot of times I have a lot of challenges with getting them to connect.
And it did say that the switching was going to be a lot nicer in the new ones as well.
That's if I hear people saying that that's an improvement, then I could see seeing people upgrading. But I mean, if you already have the case right now, the AirPods now, I don't know if there's any beneficial reason to upgrade. But yep, like you said, charging is quicker, and setup is easy. Yes, and the pricing is $159 if you choose. They give you at least the option. If you don't want the wireless charging, you can buy it with the standard price of what has what they had been already, which was $159. And then if you want the wireless charging capabilities, then you go $199. So again, I don't know much else we could say about them. Not that anything too terribly exciting about that. So, but and then the other one, which I thought was going to come out, it didn't. I don't know if I'm sad or if I'm indifferent. Is the iPod Touch?
I'm sad.
I'm kind of sad. I mean, I think
I'm very sad because the current iPod is 4 years old, and we use them. Full disclosure, I'm a volunteer at After Girls, and we use them there all the time. And we have some that are at the point where they need to be replaced. And I'm sad that, again, just like the iMacs, like I don't want to pay 2019 money for a 2015 iPod, and that's where I'm at. And even then, it was only a slight revision in the first place. And part of the reason that I'm additionally grumpy, I guess, it's because the screen acreage has not kept up with what the phones look like. So, and I'm not unhappy about that as a device, but I'm unhappy about that because we use them for development. And I know a lot of people who have an iPod Touch that they use as their development device. They charge it all up and they bring it with them to WWDC. And when Tim is done with the keynote where we get the preview of the new thing and he says that the beta is available for everybody, and then we break for lunch, everybody takes that iPod Touch and goes outside and sits in the sun with their laptop and installs that 0-day beta alpha basically on their device and goes to see what happens. What's it like? How does it work? How broken is it? What's rough around the edges? And with that device, you don't have to pay for a line of service. You don't have to, it's not a contract that you have to pay for all the time. It's just a nifty little device that you can just sort of use. And then the problem is if you start trying to do development for that, like it's going to be really hard to translate that to the larger screens on my 8 or your 10S Max. Like, you know, even mine is a good deal bigger than what an iPod is, than an actual iPod sized device. And I feel like if nothing else, they should be a tiny bit bigger and we should get a little bit of storage on them. And I understand that, you know, they may just still be kept around for sentimental reasons and nobody really wants to do anything to iterate on those. But I feel like there's a legitimate market there for an inexpensive non-contract devize that allows you to do that.
For an iPhone, right?
Yeah, and I mean, at this point, like the iPad Mini is the thing that I would look at as a 0-day development device because it's got way more recent hardware than what the iPod does. And I still think there's a lot of people who could use the iPod aside from people who are developers. You know, if you're a person with a sound system in your kitchen and that's all you want to do, or maybe you just want to stream music to the good speakers and you just want to have this device that's connected all the time that sits in there and streams the music to those speakers for you, or this is the trial device to see if your kid is ready for an iPhone, or just to get your kid off your iPhone so that they don't mess with your Angry Birds score and they can have their own Angry Birds score. Like there's
or they erase your phone.
There's lots of ways that this becomes a really nice ancillary device. It's like the MacBook Air of mobile devices. Like it's not it may not be your primary device, and for a lot of people it's not going to be the best primary device, but for people who have a need for that sort of sidekick iOS device, this is perfection. And why is it just continuing to age? It bums me out.
Yeah. Well, and there's still plenty of people out there still holding on to their 5th gen and 4th gen and models, which are end of the road. They can't go past, I think, iOS 10. So, but I agree.
Oh, and the iPods. I thought you meant like actual, honest to God, 5th gen iPod. And I'm like, yeah, that's me with the little drive in it.
iPod Touch.
Yeah. Not the touch.
Not the classic.
Yeah, the old school iPod, the first one that played video. Yes, I still have one of those. I still use it almost every day. It's in the car. I loaded it up with I don't think it's quite 80 gigabytes of music because it was the first iPod that played video. So there's some video.
I had it at one point. I sold it. So
yeah, I'm at the point now where I look at it because this is my idea of a good time. I look at it and go, that spinning drive takes so long. I wonder how hard it would be to put an SSD in that bad boy.
Yeah, I don't know if they sell drives that small.
Oh, they do. Oh, they do.
Okay.
Yeah, people have done it or upgraded it to just like an SD card, like a 256 gigabyte SD card. I've seen a lot of that. And I have a really awesome screwdriver set that will get me into most Apple hardware. And so I'm like, yes. Let me put some miles on my screwdrivers. This is going to be a good time. Like I said,
iPods are easy to get in.
Oh, yes. So now I've been sort of kicking around the idea of maybe upgrading my iPod to SSD and making it a little perkier and continuing to use it because I adore it.
It's a good model. And
I've never had a problem with doing anything with it. So every time they update iTunes, I'm like, oh God, is this the one where I can't put music on my iPod anymore?
So far, they haven't done anything yet. So
I'm hoping that they just forgot.
Yeah.
That this is still a thing that people do, and so I'll still get to do it for a while. That's my hope.
Just like any other device. I mean, it's not. I mean, yeah. I mean, I think even if you had the first gen iPod, it might still work too.
It might.
My father-in-law has I think they had with the FireWire, the old first gen. I think we gave that to him as a gift a long time ago. He still uses it. Still works. So, iOS. Let's talk a little bit about that. 12.2 is very close near to release. They just released beta 6, which they had beta 5 a couple days before. Now beta 6 is out. And if you're a public beta tester, you can download it and install it. And like I say to everybody, don't do it unless you know what you're doing. You know what you're doing because you are teaching all the girls how to do this stuff. So
no, I just laugh because I do a podcast with Don Melton and people refer to him as Gramps, and he always says, as you know, Gramps don't beta. And so so whenever you talk about betas, you're like, don't do it. And all I hear in the back of my head is Gramps don't beta. Yep, that's correct.
And then, of course, they did include some new animojis, which is very important.
Yes.
A giraffe, a shark, a boar, and an owl. So,
real talk, that's the only reason I'm sad I don't have a 10.
Oh, right, because you can't do it.
A 10 model phone is because, and not even just Animoji, it's because this started, I think, 24 hours after a friend of mine got the first iPhone 10 that had Animoji at all. We started, because the next day we had karaoke, and so we started Animoji karaoke. And
oh, my God. I think you're going to need to do that at MacStock. I want to do that. I think you and I should be doing that. I'll find another phone for you just to use or something.
Yeah, I'll send Barry an email. He'll let me use his phone. It'll be fine.
That's right. I forgot. Barry has plenty of phones he could spare.
I'm sure Barry has a 10 in a drawer that he will let me.
Mr. Barry Folk,
let me memoji for the night.
Roving reporter and
MacStock social director.
We'll talk about MacStock a little bit at the end here.
Or as I like to call him, cruise director Julie.
Yeah, he is. And
he walks around with a clipboard and makes sure everybody's having a good time. So
I was following him along and
checks out.
Can't keep him up. Can't keep up with them. But anyway, so a lot of it also with the update to 12.2 is going to be the addition to all the support for the news app, as well as the TV app, as I'm sure a lot of enhancements will be needed in the beta for that. And of course, we had mentioned about I mentioned in previous episodes, but I'll mention again about the AirPlay 2 announcements that you'll be able to have a remote in 12.2 to utilize any of the TV manufacturers that are going to be supporting AirPlay 2, such as Vizio, Samsung, LG, and to their smart TVs, which I think is there's another opening right there with opening up with the TV services, because they're I never thought Apple would ever be allowing other third-party companies to be using their technology on their equipment. So
yeah.
That was the reason I'm going to pretty much almost positively say that happened. So, it should be interesting to see where it goes, what that goes. Anything else? I don't know. There's just so much I can't even keep up. All the things we had. was announced this week. We're coming into the weekend, and we're going to be itching to find out what's announced. So
yeah,
it's going to be definitely interesting to see where all that goes when it comes to that. So anything else? So we didn't cover. I can't think of anything else
with iOS. No, I think we've got it covered. There's not a lot. I mean, it's all been iterative, to that point, up to this point. So basically, I think we're really at the bolt tight. We're about to get to sort of the maintenance / bolt tightening, where not a lot of interesting stuff is going to happen until June.
Yeah, with WWDC coming.
Yeah, we're reaching the end of 12, and we're starting to look at what
iOS 13
at what sort of shape 13 is going to take. And I'm partly interested in that. And I feel like now that it is the year in which it was released, I can talk about it, because I know last summer we were getting stories about what the next version was going to look like. Right. Anyway, so now that it's not that far away, part of what I'm curious about is the other ways that we are going to get interoperability between macOS and iOS, because this year is when we're supposed to hear more about Project Marzipan, which is the App Store, the App Store experience, which is basically iOS code that is running on macOS, and Apple News on your Mac, which is all based on the Apple News app on your phone. And so I'm interested to see what other, because they've been sort of teaming them up in various ways for a while now. There's clipboard options now. We have the continuity and handoff stuff. If you really want to, you can answer a call on your Mac, and you can get messages. You can send a text message from your Mac. If your phone's in the vicinity somewhere, you can airdrop back and forth between them more easily. Like, that gets easier and faster all the time. So they're making it possible on the iOS end for stuff to work together better. And I'm curious how that's going to evolve, and how that relationship looks once we get a look at Mojave Plus and iOS 13.
Right.
So I'm interested in what shape that's going to take. And part of that is because we've been hearing more about this, and they told us last year that Marzipan was coming and that they'll have more information about it this year. But just all you need to know is that the App Store and Apple News are using it now, and it's a thing that we're making work, and we will tell you lots about it next year. So I expect that kind of stuff is going to get a lot of attention. And aside from the mechanics of making it so anybody with an iOS app can make a macOS app, I want to know what other sort of teaming up they're going to do with both of these operating systems, so that your ecosystem is a little bit more unified and everything works together optimally. No. So
it absolutely has to. One last thing I was going to talk about, actually, I just saw one last thing that just came out. Apple today updated their Apple Store app, and it gained some more today at Apple sessions. Have you attended any of those sessions? Are you near an Apple Store?
I'm near. There are 3 in the area. The closest one is about 20 minutes away, which isn't bad. But I haven't attended any. Ages and ages ago, when
very good.
they just have events. App Camp did have an Apple Store event at one point, and that was really cool. And we would do it again, Apple. But
yeah, they do it now. I mean, I see Girl Scouts going in there. I see all kinds of groups going there. So,
and I look forward to them. I've been looking at the schedule because they have gotten more interesting.
Yeah.
And there are more. There's a lot more on offer than there used to be as far as the Today at Apple stuff. I think that's something that Angela Ahrendts really pushed was.
And she's leaving
the retail experience, and that's the thing to me that is so fascinating. I mean,
it is. I enjoy going to the Apple Store every time, and not just there just to buy something. But
it's the evolution of that experience, and it's like going there not necessarily to buy anything. But the problem is, and if you go there to buy something, that's a great experience. And if you go there for Today at Apple, or you go there for, I just want to get my hands on this and feel what the new phone feels like, or see what the new iPad looks like, or anything like that. Like, all of that, super duper great. Like, the minute you have an issue that you have to consult a professional about,
yep,
the Apple Store is a disaster. Like, it's not a great experience.
Yeah, the geniuses can get busy.
It's and it's not even like the actual transaction of the assistance. Like, I'm here because this thing isn't working and I need you to help me get it working again. And I hear this from all kinds of people. I hear this from really technical people like you and I, down to really non-technical people who like don't have another option, and they've like tapped the knowledge in their circle, and besides that, like they've tapped all of the knowledge that they have in their circle, and now they have to go seek a professional. And so they go to the professional and they're like, this was an awful experience, whether it's a walk-in, whether you scheduled it,
it's busy.
All of that stuff. It's super busy. And then sometimes, because of the amount of busy that's happening, like, the genius can get frazzled or confused or
sometimes
not always feel like, and you may feel like, like, well, okay, so what's the problem with your iPhone? I'm not here for my iPhone. I'm here with a laptop, or whatever. Like there's, the aftercare sort of in all of this has really taken a nosedive. It feels like, I do occasionally have to take stuff to the Apple Store, and I've had a range of experiences.
Me too. I mean, it varies.
Yeah, and it's not even the store, and it's not even the genius, and it's not the day. Like, just it seems very hit and miss, and it didn't used to be that way. And I think part of why I notice it so much is because the 3 Apple stores in my area all went through remodels, and and it used to be like a great experience in the tiny little cramped awful stores, and then the stores got nicer and the experience got way worse, and I think that for me is what's frustrating. Like, it's a bigger store and it looks really nice, and the sun comes in the side now, and it's not in the underground section of the shopping mall, and like all of this is supposed to be better, and now and like this dude has walked up to me for the 3rd time asking me about my phone when I'm here about my laptop. Like, it just, like, to me, I think that's what makes it so jarring, is like, I get to go to this nice, beautiful store in this new location, and it turns out that the experience just sucks. So,
yeah, but I mean, I'll turn around then. I mean, I've had good experiences for the most part. Yes. I mean, the store that's local here to where I live, there's some great people who are doing this Today at Apple stuff. Know somebody, I know she's listening, that she does a great job. She just became a creative not too long ago, and she does, and they stand up at the front of the room, and all those Apple stores have those big, huge screens that shows all the video, doing things like Apple Watch, and just to watch her do a demonstration of Apple Watch, sticking it under her camera and talking about what Apple Watch basics are, just standing in front of the room, and not everybody's listening. There, a lot of people are there because they want to get their phones repaired or their Macs repaired, but people are still sitting in the audience and want to learn. Then they do the hands-on stuff with this Today at Apple, and then anything from I see up here. There's getting started with GarageBand. I like to sit in on that just to see. I mean, I use GarageBand to edit this podcast, but there's always something I'm going to learn that's new, and that's look, you and me, we're both IT professional people. We know a lot of this stuff, but we don't know everything. And that's what I tell people: go to the Apple Store if you really want to learn something. See what they're going to be talking about. I mean, they have iPhone basics, watch basics, iPad basics, and then they even have the next level. Same thing with Mac, and same thing with all the other products. You can go in there, and they're gonna sit down with you. Most of those folks are very good at what they do with training. I do a lot of training for work at my works too, so I see it. And but I do it, and I will sit in on these just because I like to I want to learn. I continue to learn. I continue to understand. But they have things like I went on a photo walks session with once, and
those
that was fun.
Great sessions.
We walked around. I ended up buying one of those Osmo Mobile 2 arms for $130 because someone had it. And now I own one. So I mean, they're doing stuffs with they have photographers that actually lead the courses a lot of times. But they're free, which is just awesome.
Yeah.
Anywhere between, I mean, and you with the App Camper girls doing with stuff with coding and apps, they're doing coding. I want to sit in on coding. I'm horrible at understanding, knowing how to code. I want to just do good basics, just understand Swift, just understand a lot of what you do with designing an app. So, no, I would check them out. They're still great. There's still great sessions there. And
yeah, like the Apple Store experience is great. It's kind of the rest of it. Like if if you want to show up for a session, if you want somebody to teach you a thing, like those are super great. I do know people who have gone and really enjoyed them. Right. And, and like I said, buying something there is fantastic. Like, I've seen that happen recently. And well, not even that, like if you need a computer or you go to get a new iPad, maybe for example, right. You pick up a new Apple Watch, whatever, like those are as a retail experience, those are great experiences. And I think that's part of why I get even more frustrated about like the aftercare stuff being in the state it's in, is because so many other pieces of it are better than they used to be. And then I think that's why it stands out so much that this isn't quite where it should be as an experience.
Absolutely. So before we wrap things up here, I want to talk just very briefly. I've been talking a lot about it, but we need to talk about just a little bit more. Is MacStock. MacStock 2019 is coming.
It is.
This is its 5th year. I mean, I've attended all 5 years, and more than likely I'm speaking again this year. I can't officially say if I am or not, but we'll see. But it's July 27th, 28th of this year, 127 days away. And it's probably one of the greatest conferences I've ever been to. I mean, and not only because I speak there, but I also love to sit and attend and to network and to meet people. I met you the first time last year, and now we're good friends here in the podcast world. So that, I mean, it just, the value I've had, and not just being able to meet everybody I've met. I met Allison Sheridan, I met Chuck Joyner, I met Tim Robertson, I met Guy Cyril. All these folks that are been in the Apple community forever, and it's such a cozy, very cozy conference compared to Mac World, which I never attended, but I know from hearing 10, 20,000 people, it's just not. It just, you don't get the experience this.
You don't.
But it's in the Chicago area. It's local. it's local to Chicago. So actually in Woodstock, Illinois. And we'd love to have you come out and. I know, Kelly, you could say anything more. This will be your 2nd year now, right?
Yes. I'm working on travel plans now. Like literally, Barry just texted me. Cruise director Julie is getting in touch with me about what's going on.
He's like, "What are you doing? You better be coming."
Yes. And he needs me as karaoke host. So
there's absolutely no question you're going to be hosting that again. She was the karaoke queen, if anybody doesn't know, and it was a lot of fun. So.
I'm blushing now. Okay.
Yeah. They'll make you blush.
Well, it's a thing that I love, and
we had a lot of fun.
I'm out of that like karaoke closet. Like there's no getting around it. She was into it. I even sang, and I don't do that often. Yeah, I kind of have that's probably my superpower. Well, that I can fold a fitted sheet, but I think my superpower is like, I don't do karaoke, and just wait. It's so much fun. And like the thing from my perspective, like the thing about it isn't meeting those people, it's getting to hang out with those people again. And that was always the advantage to Macworld. Right. Exactly. I got to hang out with David Sparks at Macworld. I got to hang out with Brett Terpstra and Chuck Joyner and David Chartier and like Adam Christensen and all of these people of other people who are super amazing, whose names I'm forgetting right now. No. Because there were a lot of people at Macworld. Like you said.
Yeah, exactly.
Thousands of people.
Impossible.
At Macworld. But like what I love about MacStock was the vibe of it, and how everybody's there for the same thing, which is like, I want to expand my brain a little bit. I want to flex some tech muscles and see how that feels or how that works. Yep. And I did speak last year, and I had a lot of fun speaking.
Great.
And I will point out,
we competed against each other during our breakout sessions.
I was sad about that.
Yeah, I was too.
I did lure people into mine with the shameless bribery of I will be giving candy to people in my session.
But I was on the main stage. You were in the small room. So
yes. But I will point out that literally last night I spoke to a Mac user group as a result of a connection that I made at MacStock.
Right.
So I met someone at MacStock. Yeah, I met Bob at MacStock, who runs the Tucson Mac user group, and we had a conversation. He said, would you come speak to my mug? And I was like, Tucson's kind of far, but do you have Skype? And so we worked it out. And he made sure he took a bag of candy, and anybody in the audience that asked questions was given candy, just like at my talk. And I was very excited.
He remembered.
He did. And I thought it was, I loved it. I thought it was hilarious. But like the thing that I loved about going to MacStock was that everybody that was talking was into what they were talking about, which sounds weird. But sometimes you can go see somebody give a talk that they've given a lot of times, or it's maybe about a subject that they know people want to hear about that they personally aren't necessarily interested in. And so they kind of stand up there and they're kind of mediocre at it, right? Like it's not a great presentation. It's not exciting. It's not interesting. And you can tell when people don't care about what they're talking about. And nobody at MacStock had that problem, which I thought was like, everybody at MacStock is talking about something that they care about. And even if you don't understand it, and even if you don't necessarily follow the thing that they're telling you, you're still able to tell that person is into what they're telling you. So you get a little, at least you're interested, on that level. But also you get the chance, like at lunch or during a break, during like an afternoon break or during happy hour at the end of the evening, like what was that thing that you were saying about using,
you could go up and talk to them
inside of another snippet? And I'll tell you, and for me, like people did come up to me, at different points throughout and ask me about my talk. And for me, the best part of that was not only did you pay attention, but you paid enough attention that you had that question and you held on to it until you found me at lunch the next day and said, I want to ask you this thing that I want to know more about. And you remembered, like I sometimes have a hard time at lunchtime remembering what I ate for breakfast. And so you remember something that somebody on stage told you yesterday, and now you're going to come today and find that person and go, I wanted to find out more about this thing that you were saying, was spectacular. And so like for me, the feedback was great, and the immediacy of being in front of everybody, like right there, super great. All of that was so much fun. And then just getting an opportunity to meet people, to meet Bob from on Mac User Group, and to get to be, like I said, in person with people who are my friends. Like, I get, it's funny that I only ever, like Adam Christensen, for example, like I never see him in his hometown and I never see him in mine. We both have to go someplace else.
You're kind of
in order to get to hang out.
Opposite end coast there. So
anyway, I've been to San Diego and not been able to meet up, and he's been to Portland and we've not been able to meet up. But like both of us in San Francisco, that's a thing that can happen. Both of us in Chicago, from the West Coast, but we end up in Chicago. That's a thing that happens.
It happens.
So, but the opportunity just to get to spend time in person, like this is the same thing that I say about every conference, and the reason that I don't want conferences to go away. And I understand that virtual is a really useful way to get information. So like, we talk about WWDC, and like all the videos from WWDC are publicly available, and that's fine. That's not what people go into WWDC for. People go to conferences for the hallway track.
To talk to Jack.
Yeah, it's the hallway track. It's always what I've called it. Like running into someone in the hallway, bumping into somebody at lunch, being in line for a thing next to a person that you've been trying to talk to or whatever. Those are the people, like those are the opportunities that you will never get by sitting at home by yourself in your office and watching a video on a screen. You will get useful information communicated that way, but you will not make a friend. You will not have an in-joke with a friend, with somebody else. You will not inspire a podcast. You will not, the stories I could tell you about random stuff that happens at conferences, like, and I'm not even talking about like the really interesting ones, like pending legal action keeps me from telling you about the really good ones, but even the regular ones, like finding out that somebody else likes a show that you like, and your co-host on your podcast for that television show has had oral surgery and is unable to speak and therefore cannot host the show with you. And you just so happen to find two other people, one of whom who's never been on a podcast before, and you go, hi, so if you guys are going to go watch tonight's episode and I have to get something out the door before I go to bed tonight, is there anything you want to chat with me on this show? And on the fly, can we get this done? Because my co-host has had emergency mouth surgery and can't say anything about anything, and is just going to text me what he wants to make sure he wants to text me his assessment so that we can talk about it. Do you want to do this with me? And it worked.
Yes. Anyway,
that's an actual episode of my podcast. You can
let's wrap up with wrap up MacStock. Go to MacStock2019.com. Button on there. Register today. Best bargain you'll ever find. $179 for the 2-day event. Check it out on that website. We would love to have you, and we'd love to meet you. And we'll keep talking about this because it's coming up in a couple of months. So, but check it out. Early bird specials aren't going to go for long. So
no.
Please check it out. So, and this our hour has gone by fast, and tell people how they can find you. And you talk about App Camp, if you want to be brief with App Camp for Girls, and just tell everybody how they can find you.
Well, I'm hard to miss.
This is true.
I'm very chatty and I'm very public about it. So the first place you can find me is 5 mornings a week at macobserver.com, where I host the
great show.
I host the Daily Observations podcast, and we talk about a couple of tech topics each week, or each day, I mean. And we talk, it's been a long week today, and we talk about them. It's a brief show. It's between 20 and 30 minutes. And unless you say headphones to Dave, like I did this morning. And you can find me there, which is at macobserver.com. You can also find me over at the Incomparable Network, where my podcast there is called Greetings from the Uncanny Valley, and it's a show about Westworld. And I do pop up on other shows there from time to time. Low Definition is one that I did recently. I also was on the main show talking about Captain Marvel, the movie that just came out. You can also
we'll talk afterwards.
You can also find me on my show with my friend Mike Rose, which is called The After Show with Mike and Kelly.
You are a podcaster.
And that's at aftershowpodcast.com. The rest of the time, you can find me on Twitter, and you should find me on micro.blog as Verso in both places.
All right. Thank you for being here, Kelly. I'm so glad you came back. I'll have you again for sure.
I'm so glad to be here. Let me give one last plug for App Camp for Girls, which is our, like I said, iOS development. It's a week-long day camp, and we teach girls, transgender, and gender nonconforming students who are going into 8th and 9th grade. We are in 3 cities this year, and we are always looking for donations, and we're always looking for volunteers, and we're always looking for people who want to do the groundwork on an upcoming location. You can find all of that information at appcamp4girls.org.
Okay.
And if you go there, and if you decide that you want to donate, and you say that you heard about App Camp from the In Touch with iOS podcast, you will get something special in the mail sent to you personally from me.
Awesome. I would like to see that. All right. Let's wrap things up here. That's a wrap for this week. Please send your comments, questions, and suggestions to our email address, feedback@intouchwithios.com. You can follow us on Twitter at InTouchWithIOS. You can subscribe in your favorite podcatcher, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Spotify, and TuneIn Radio. Or better yet, go to our website at intouchwithios.com, where all the links to listen to us are there. I am Dave Ginsburg, and you can find me on Twitter at DaveG65. Again, thank you, Kelly Guimont, for being here today.
You are more than welcome.
I appreciate it. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.